Hello.
Hey there.
Hello.
How are you all doing?
Great.
Nice.
Hi.
Hey, Casimir. I think we could actually probably jump in. We're only a minute late. That's kind of a rare one for us. Yeah, let me figure out how to start sharing my screen. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, please add yourself to the attendees list. And if you have anything you want to talk about in the agenda, please be sure to add it. I think Johannes is joining us in a little bit, or maybe he's already here. Yeah, we can jump into this. So yeah, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the status of the API refactor. Just maybe to pause for just a second. I can't see the participants list. There it is. Okay, yeah, I don't see Johannes on yet, but Krasimir and Johannes are, just give a little introduction for people that aren't familiar. Krasimir is returning to the project from a little bit of a hiatus. Yeah, he's a former major contributor, I would say, former approver as well. And he works for Kinvoke, and Kinvoke is contracted with New Relic recently, so we're happy to bring him back onto the project. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more, Krasimir. Maybe not. But yeah, so just kind of an introduction on that. And with that, like the idea is that he's been very actively working on this ticket to re-encapsulate the OTel API, the thing that's blocking the next release, and making some great progress on that. I think the current status is the open PR is active to change the propagators and baggage package. This has already been moved. Yeah, so I'm one behind on my linkage here, but yeah, so that is the next one, next big one. I think, Krasimir, if you wanted to talk a little bit about maybe progress after that.
It's not a big one, just getting propagation, not a lot of code. But I think this is, there's one more PR I think to go, which is where I moved the global package to the top level and update the documentation, and that should be it. So I just decided to split them in two because there's a bunch of code moved from global internal into global into internal global, so there's like more code changes.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why I split them. But other than that, it's just same thing. Just move the code, rename some imports. That's it. So there was only the question about the metric test thing that was merged into auto test. So your question was whether we should split them back again, because right now auto test contains, like, let's say, the test code for tracing and for metrics. I think it's probably fine for them to stay like to stay in the single package, because it's not a lot of API. So that was my assumption, basically. It stays like this. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything to change there.
Yeah. That was kind of my assumption as well. When I was looking at this, I was also kind of punting on it and wondering if we could kind of figure it out at a later point, but maybe this, my goal is in this conversation to kind of get the community's kind of pulse on this one, just to see what everyone else thinks about the OTO test. I imagine I've got some guesses, but I'd love to hear from Steve, Anthony, Evan, Johannes. I see you're on as well. I see Andrew's on as well. I don't know if he cares about the OTO test, but
I don't know. Maybe you will want to file an issue about auto test. I don't know if your experience does feel that you can gather some feedback through GitHub issue, or it's mostly through this meeting.
Yeah, I think if there's any contention, I absolutely want to open up an issue for it. But if there's also just no desire to really split it up again, then I don't really want to waste it. So I was kind of just wondering if anybody else thought that we should be doing the split again and moving things back into the metrics and trace test packages.
So this is almost finished. So
I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I think it's convenient to have it all together in one package, and it maybe makes sense to have them in separate packages since we've kept traces and metrics separate in the restructuring. But I don't know. I'm also not sure it matters a whole lot.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't really have a strong feel. I think what I'm going to do is I'll just I'll open up an issue and we can close it if there's really no desire on that. But yeah, I'm on the same boat. I think that it kind of makes sense just for what we used to do for symmetry, but it also is really nice because it's cohesively in a single package. It's if you're testing, it's really nice to just kind of have it all there. It's a really small API, as Trevor pointed out. Like it seemed fine. But I'll capture this into a ticket then, and we don't, I guess, have to. We definitely don't need to make a decision today. Just kind of looking for opinions. Well, cool. Yeah, that sounds great. I guess since Andrew's on as well, maybe we can talk a little bit of high-level status. We do have the issue project board tracking our progress going forward. We have made some decent progress in the past week. There's 152 done issues, and our to-dos have dropped by 36. Last week, we took a look at this, Andrew, as well, and we had identified the fact that there was I think I can actually do this. I've done this a few times now.
Yeah, I had a quick look this morning. This is great, the way you're organizing all of this stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah, coming from you, that means a lot. Yeah, so I think that this might have filtered, might not have filtered, but we kind of identified and looked through all of the open to-do issues last time. I think actually specifically we looked through a lot of the trace open issues. And this I don't think is as defined. Let's see if I can do this again. Yeah. And these are directly related to the trace. There's a few more that obviously are related to the propagation, obviously related to the context that are not going to be captured here, but I think these were the bigger ticket ones, and we kind of have, I think, a handle on this, and we had made some really rough pie in the sky estimates of, that 2 to 4 week time period to get these done seemed reasonable as long as we have some progress going forward. And based on the work from Kresimir and Johannes in the past week, I think that is a reasonable assumption to assume that progress is going to be achievable. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a status update on that one, if that helps.
Okay. I didn't mean to derail the other agenda items. I just want to associate how this tracks with the compliance matrix with respect to the trace table and the context propagation table.
That's a good question. So I was actually, my editor is open with the spec compliance matrix right now, trying to resolve some conflicts. Try to fill that out again. I think that it's pretty close. I think that there might be some gaps and some things that we need to shore up, but I think for all of the gaps that are currently existing there, things that we haven't filled out, there are mostly captured in issues. So I think that's mostly reflective of what we have already on the project board. Just needs to, the spec compliance matrix needs to be updated with those issues to link them correctly. That being said, I'm glad Johannes is on because I wanted to talk a little bit about what he put in there and as also what I kind of put down for another issue. There is a little bit of an SDK issue that I'm kind of wanting to dive into. It's a technical one. So I think that might take a little bit of time, but for what we're trying to freeze for the API and the context API and the baggage API, the trace API, I think that we have all of those issues I opened or actively in progress right now. So my goal is to have that spec compliance matrix completed by Friday at end of day. So that's, if you can hold me to it, I'll try to be there for you on that one.
Okay. And I also want to offer if there's anything that I can do. Like I was going to start naively opening some issues in the Go repo, but I looked at it, I was like, geez, you guys already got it organized. So I felt it would have just been closed as dupe or whatnot. But I didn't know which one to link up. If there's anything you think that I could help with, let me know, and I'd be happy to help with doing some connection or association with the compliance matrix.
Yeah, let me take a first draft on it, and then can I reach out to you on Gitter maybe and just kind of sync with you on that one? Okay, cool.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's plan on doing that. Cool. thanks for everyone. We kind of bumped Andrew up a little higher, but I don't think he wants to stay on for the full meeting, so I just wanted to prioritize him a little bit. The next thing, Kresimir, you had the OTLP exporter. I haven't looked too deep into this, but I'd love maybe if you can kind of just start talking and we can kind of follow along.
So the work on the OTLP exporter is to more or less conform the specification. So as you said, it was blocked on two issues. The first one was that the specification said that you should be able to configure like two separate endpoints for tracing and for metrics, and another one was supporting some other protocol than gRPC. So this was like HTTP or like JSON over HTTP or whatever, protobuf over HTTP. I think those two issues are like really, I don't know, related to each other. I mean, you can't possibly work on both of them at the same time because they are touching the same code, which is about connection stuff. So I picked up this pull request that Stefan Privka was working before. I got a bit carried away with that, so I started laying some groundwork for splitting, the protocols, let's say. But I had some like issues with doing that, especially we have these options for specifying a number of workers. So I'm not sure if this should be a part of an exporter or part of the, let's say, protocol connection or something, because basically this number of workers, something we pass when we want to transform the export metrics into this protobuf stuff. And I suppose that in future, when we want to support like JSON over HTTP, this is not something that's gonna be used. So, but this is something that probably will be used if we want to send the protobuf over HTTP. So I don't know. This is some leaky abstraction going on here, or like I'm still trying to figure it out.
So with the worker number, that if I remember correctly was in the transform pipeline, and that is essentially like
basically what I did is like I introduced, let's say, a connection manager, right? So you create a connection manager and you pass it to the exporter, and that connection manager is what will those protocols implement. So for now we have that gRPC, and then we probably later we will have this HTTP protobuf and HTTP JSON connection manager.
Right.
So I was wondering whether the number of workers should be a part of the exporter or the connection manager. So that's like,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because the not every connection manager is going to use that. I don't know. It's like we don't have those other connection managers, like, so I don't know if the number of workers will be useful for all of them.
I mean, my guess is to just remove that worker number. I had originally written that so that this thing can become a little bit more high powered when concurrency was needed. But if that is getting in the way of implementing the specification or in any sort of design choices, like that was a feature that was, I guess, pre-optimized maybe as a way to say that.
Yeah, that was my feeling too. It's like, how are you going to know what number of routines you will need? That probably, if at some point if this becomes like a bottleneck, then probably maybe we can do some smart code that basically adapt the number of routines to use. Yeah, okay, so I don't know. Maybe I'll just remove it and then you can just reintroduce it in some clever way. Other than that, when I was working on this, as I said, this is like very related to the other issue of supporting other protocols. You said that probably it will be useful to put those protocols into separate modules. So you can use the OTLP exporter with, for example, HTTP JSON protocol, so you don't pull the gRPC dependency. But right now, it would be nice to use the generated code we have from the OpenTelemetry Proto because it generates code for both protobuf and also has some annotation for JSON. So that would be a nice thing to reuse. But the problem that generated code is pulling gRPC anyway, so I don't know. Use a different proto generator or we just write our JSON marshaller like from scratch to avoid that. But that would be duplication of work that's already done.
So could we abstract that to not? I think your design goal is a really good idea to try to reduce the dependency overhead if you're not going to use gRPC, because we've had other people kind of that's a problematic library, as I'm sure you know, or the protobuf library. Like people are not really excited when that thing gets included into their code base. So I think that's a really good design choice. I'm hearing what you're saying, and it might just be worth it to duplicate the code a little there, though, to try to solve that problem. Is my first inclination. I haven't looked too deep. I'm wondering also if you could abstract that a little bit. Well, it's already an internal package. If you're importing it, it's importing it. Yeah,
So
that's a tough one.
I find that right now it's probably hard to talk because there's no code to see. So yeah, so I just, when I'm done working with some initial version of the file pull request, and so you can have a look at it, and then you can probably have some idea of what could be done or what not. So basically just wanted to say what the status update of this OTLP exporter work. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think keeping them as separate modules is a good place to start, even if they'll end up pulling in gRPC, because if at a later date we're able to eliminate that dependency in some manner, either by using a different struct generator or by deciding to duplicate some of those structs, then we don't have to ask people to change what modules they're importing. We can just update it and they'll get that benefit.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Okay, I look forward to looking at that PR, Kresimir, so I'm excited. You got me thinking about OTLP again. Cool. I think the next issue that I have on the agenda is the same thing that Johannes has on here, so we can kind of just, I think we'll just jump straight to his link. Johannes, I gave your introduction a little bit before you jumped on the call, but I was
Cool.
just kind of letting everyone kind of know who you were. And we're working on this span processor OnStart stuff. Maybe you want to give a little bit of a background on it. I read through it. I've got some suggestions, but I kind of wanted to, maybe you can just give a little introduction on it.
Yeah, sure. So basically, there is the OnStart and OnEnd methods on the span processor interface. Basically, the span object is kind of a write-only entity when you look at it from the API's point of view. So if you need to grab data from the span's internal state, for example, to export things, then you kind of cannot do it from the API because, for example, you cannot read attributes. You can only set them. And basically, up to now, before we started trying to align these methods to the spec, then what we had is, instead of passing a span struct to OnStart and OnEnd, we would pass a span data struct, and that doesn't follow the spec. Now, right now I'm working on the change to actually pass a span to these methods, but the problem is that the moment we do that, then we need to do some tricks before we can actually operate on the contents of a span. Yeah, I basically, like, I have a kind of a concrete question there, which is, are we intentionally copying a span data in the SDK, for example, inside span.end? And I tried to provide relevant snippets in my question there, because right now what happens is the moment I change the function signature of the interface, I broke some tests, and then I started digging in and figure out exactly what broke, and I realized that basically we end a span, but the end time of a span is not reflected in the original span because at some point we copied this weird span data struct, and we made the modification there, and then we pass on this span data to the exporter, but the original span is unmodified. And yeah, I don't have enough background about the Go library to know if this copying is intentional and by design, or this was kind of a bug that was never caught. And I think it is very likely that it was a bug that was never caught because, again, we didn't pass the original span object to the exporter. We passed this span data, which is basically copying more or less everything from the span's internal state to a struct that the exporter can use. So yeah, I'm trying to basically wrap my head around that. And if anybody has some context, it would be really helpful.
Yeah. I have some context. Krasmir was also here when this was kind of put in place, so he also probably has some things he could think about. But I do think that it was intentional, that it was a copy of the span data being passed specifically for the idea that once it's sent down the export pipeline, the span processor pipeline, you don't ever want there to be some sort of confusion about the state that it actually sent, and it needs to actually go that way. And that eventually became termed in the specification as a read span or a read-only span, is what originally I think our span data got like kind of morphed into like the terminology wise in the span high level. So I think if that's the case, I linked the specification on this.
I was
Sorry, go ahead.
wondering if the modification, like, setting the end timestamp was being set on a copy instead of an original. I suppose that
Yes,
we want
it
to
is.
change the original and then maybe make a copy and send that to the exporter. So I suppose it was just so that exporter can modify the span data, so they get the copy. But
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, I didn't know if it makes sense at the conceptual level, if after a span has ended, that anything would need to modify it, anything other than the exporter, for example. But yeah, right now, like the reality is that we're definitely setting the end timestamp only in the copy in span.end in the SDK. And to me, it doesn't make sense because if anything, I don't know what, tries to read the span, this state is not reflected there anymore. And I think the only reason why it has been caught by unit tests right now is up to now is because we've been relying in the unit tests on the modified copy. And now that I made this change to actually pass a span to on start and on end, then suddenly the regional struct is what gets evaluated, and then this potential bug got uncovered. But I'm not sure if this theory is correct, and this is why I brought it up.
So yeah, I think it has some partial truth to it, but I think there's a little bit of confusion. I think that, the on-end method should, I think in reality, actually take the span data, not the API span. I think that was actually correct. There's a caveat on that, but we'll kind of get to that. And then the on start, I think, should take the span API because that is supposed to be the modifiable span, I guess is how I would say that, right? And the on span shouldn't actually have that. Another part of this is we kind of talked about this last time, was the span itself when you actually end the span, which is the thing that actually sends it off to the on-to-end side of things. All of the other methods for that span after that fact should be no ops essentially, and they shouldn't actually change the internal state of the span, because you shouldn't have this like ambiguity of like you end the span and then you go to set the status afterwards, and then you were kind of in this gray area. It was like, does that actually change the status of the thing that's getting exported, or has that already been exported? There's like this catch-22 there. And so, or not catch-22, just a race condition. And so like, I think that was actually intentional. And then with the end time, I think we should probably update the end time of the span because it would reflect it accurately, but you can also never get the end time of the span if you're an external package. So it might've been an oversight, but it also, I don't know how, it was an oversight. Probably say that, or it was intentional because they knew that you would never get it, but it may not be the best idea to just leave that unset from the span level. So that being said, I think that the actual interface for the on end, sorry, I lost my place. We may need to kind of rethink about how we structured our readable span and our read write span objects, because the readable span is like span data that comes from the export package, the SDK trace export package, and the read write span is kind of the API, but kind of like what you just pointed out, it's not really, because you can't actually read all of the values of the span at that point.
I see it as write only mostly, because like all the interesting fields in this case, for example, are inaccessible via the API. So basically, if we do that, then this sort of solves my problem, because then I don't have to do the breaking change, or well, it's not the right term, but I don't have to break the unit tests anymore because I'm not changing on end. But then we have kind of a disparity because on start accepts a span and on end accepts a span data, where like no matter how we call it in the Go library, the spec explicitly says that it's the same thing that is passed to both methods.
It
Right.
doesn't though, does it? I mean, the spec here says that on start receives a writable span object and on end receives a readable span object.
Yeah,
I think
essentially
they are
two different things.
different things and can be different
Right.
types.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I misinterpreted that. No, I saw the word span and I assumed like the spec doesn't dictate the details of the library. So I assumed like there is a notion called span and it's the same thing in both cases. But yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, so that's actually, I think, where originally that's how the Go implementation is written, and that like there is a span, and then like we have a span data, which is a different conceptual thing. And people took that, and I saw like in the Java world, there are actually two different objects for a span, probably because they have generics there and they're able to just implement this like idea of a span. But it's a readable span and a read-writable span, I think is what they call it in the Java world. I was kind of looking for a reference on this, but yeah, they are definitely different. They can be different types. They likely need to be different types at this point. But I'm not sure that our structure of code is fulfilling the specification, or if it's serving us well at this point. And I was kind of like, your questions were starting to make me wonder if we need to kind of like rethink about like what a read-writable span is at this point and in the SDK. And if there's like maybe some sort of additional interface it could implement or something like that, where we could say like you could actually get data from this or something like that, might be a useful thing.
Yeah, and I think the question Johannes had asked about whether we take that make span data function and export it might help with that. So it would allow you to take an SDK span and turn it into a readable span. You wouldn't be able to make changes to that and have it, you know, in the API span that you've got. So I don't know if that fully satisfies the spec's new idea of a read-write span, or if we want to actually put accessors on the API for API spans. You know, that section on the spec is a bit weird because it seems to think that the API should be write only, but that the SDK should allow you to access the data.
Yeah, I think that has to do with Java's interface system and how you can implement partial interface or explicitly implement an interface versus Go where it's implicit. And so I think that that's an option, like having like this make span data as just like a way to take a writable span and get from it the readable side of things. Another option, I thought about this for 20 minutes. So I don't have like the best ideas on this one yet, I don't think. But just like in the SDK package itself, adding an interface that's like a read-write span interface. And then you can check to see like if the span implements this, then you can also, you know, it would also implement these additional accessory methods. And then you could, you know, directly pass those in the SDK. You know, as long as it doesn't bleed into the API, I guess which is fine. I don't think it would, but that's kind of another idea I thought about. I haven't thought it completely through, but I think there's maybe some ways to explore. I do think that there's a gap here. I think we need to kind of address it before we release this, because this is, I think, a problem.
Yeah, so this is starting to look like a scope creep to me. So the question is like, do we do this sort of rethinking in the context of 1304, or we say we're going to put that on hold, figure out the first issue first, and then?
Well, I'd say maybe we can somehow document or say, okay, so read-only span is basically a copy of span data, because whatever changes you make to the copy of span data basically gets lost, so the original is not modified. And read-write span could be just a pointer to original span data, so you can actually modify it the way you want. Yeah, would that be a satisfying solution? I don't know if there is something special in read-write span that span data doesn't provide.
You mean that we use span data for both methods, on start and on end?
Yeah, basically that. So you send span data for both methods, but for on start that require the read write, you send a pointer to the original span data, and for the on end you send a copy. Right.
So the problem there is that the span data doesn't include the links, the attributes, or the events. So that would probably have to we could solve that, but that doesn't currently exist in there. And then you have a concurrency problem because the span data in the span has a concurrency guarantee that multiple methods could be updating that, and they're not going to cause some sort of race conditions. And if you're passing the pointer outside of the function, there's not a guarantee at that point.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that the separation of some of the spans fields into this separate struct, maybe it has to do with like code reuse, because the export package is the thing that is going to mainly require like reading that, and this is why like people didn't want to copy things from the export, right, to the.
I don't know if I'm the best to talk about that design choice. I didn't make it, but I've also looked at it recently and been like, this is kind of weird. Like, how come half of the fields are here and half the fields are there? I think it might also have to do with optimization of like performance, because then you're kind of just passing a pointer around instead of multiple fields of the data. But that's a wild guess. That's
But you're
not
losing
substantiated.
performance. But you're also losing performance in other cases because, for example, the attributes get recursively copied between these two data structures every time. So
yeah, 100%. And then the locking as well is also inclusive for the entire span. This is something that I think I opened a ticket recently on this one, which doesn't need to be, because a lot of the methods are, they can be asynchronously adjusted on their own. They don't need to lock the entire data set. So yeah, but it's really hard to do that if the span data is encapsulating all of this other stuff. So I don't think this is the most optimal format for this right now. But I've spent like 2 hours looking at this, the actual span data format itself, and I think that it can be improved. I don't have a suggestion, I guess, or a proposal at this time, though. So maybe that's a good way to say that, is if you wanted to take a little bit more of a deeper look at this, Johannes, after we, I think 1304, we could probably merge with something that you've already kind of implemented, where maybe the OnStart, we can keep it with the readable span only, just pass a copy of the span data and include the parent context, like the context, and just kind of say like, that's cool for this issue. And then open up another issue to kind of address like the whole span data with the read and writable span, and just kind of scope it that way. Would that help?
yeah, I think that sounds easy enough.
Okay.
I might need, I'll probably need to consult with some folks regarding the design aspects of the span data refactoring, because I'm not experienced enough with the Go library, I guess. But yeah, I can tag people like ad hoc in the issue or discuss things in the next meetings, I guess.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to collaborate and work on this with you as well, because this is a pretty high priority. I didn't realize the SDK for the traces actually, we're trying to GA that in like a week or two as well. So I'd like to get this usable and conforming to the specification as well. So yeah, this is a good top priority for me as well. So yeah, let's do that. I'm going to try to capture what we've just talked about a little bit in the comments after, or if you wanted to put a comment in this issue, to try to capture some of this stuff, Johannes, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I can do that. So just to summarize, we're basically not changing the first argument to OnStart and on end right now. The only thing we're changing is changing the parent context to context.context for now, and then we'll open a follow-up issue to do like the bigger rethinking. Is that correct?
That sounds good to me. I see Anthony's nodding his head. If anybody else has any ideas.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I think that's our agenda. I'm just going to kind of open it up, stop sharing so you can see people's faces. If anybody else had anything else they wanted to talk about during the meeting that they didn't have on the agenda. Oh, David, I think bringing you back in. I think you had, you're the one that put in the open tracing bridge PR, right?
Open census.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
So I feel bad. I just wanted to say sorry to you as well. But I don't know if you saw my latest comment. I merged Kresimir tracing package change. So there just needs to be some, I think it's just package updates on that. But then we can get that merged. I just wanted to make sure we're in sync on that one.
Yep, should be good to go. I think I already bumped it past.
Oh, you're faster than I can read my notifications. Okay, cool. Then we're all good. Sorry about that again. Yeah. Cool.
Oh yeah, just one thing. I was talking about the support for the other protocols in the OTLP exporter. there was someone already like that said that they want to work on it. So I don't know what the status of it, because the last message was like 17 days ago, which is where I don't know if anything is gonna happen here. So I'm just gonna risk stepping on someone's toes at this point.
Was that
Um,
Stefan?
No.
No. Stefan was working on having separate connection for endpoints, and there was some, I don't know, Huikang or something like this, some user like that that wanted to work on that, but I haven't seen him after that.
Yeah, I think there might be just some miscommunication here.
Oh yeah, exactly this one. That
I
was
just
like 17 days ago.
yeah, I'm happy to assign this to you and make it clear that you're going to work on this. If
All right,
you're-
that probably would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's just do that. Because I think that I don't even know if they were asking that they could work on it. I think they were just asking, maybe they could be interpreted that they were just asking like, when is this
Oh,
gonna-
the other guy who commented
yeah,
that person, he
yeah.
contributed something to OpenTelemetry before. Not this one, the next one.
Okay. Oh yeah. No, yes. Yeah. We can.
Oh yeah, that
he's-
one. So he contributed something, or she, I don't know. So, but yeah, that's why I had my doubts. But anyway.
Yep. Okay. It's clear. We'll have you working on that. So.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. I think that's it for the agenda, and I don't see anybody else raising their hands. So I think we can get back another 23 minutes, which I'm all about. Cool. Thanks everyone for joining in. Great conversation. See you all online and see you virtually. But
Thanks.
Till next time.
See you, folks.
So see you in 2 weeks.
Yep.